Imagine a world where the Berlin Wall never fell, where the red flag with the hammer and sickle still flies over the Kremlin. It's a world where the Cold War never truly ended. Today, we're diving into a fascinating alternate history. What if the Soviet Union had never collapsed? Let's rewind to the 1980s. The Soviet Union was a superpower, but it was cracking under the strain of a stagnant economy and a costly arms race. In our timeline, Mikhail Gorbachev's policies of glasnost, or openness, and perestroika, meaning restructuring, were designed to save the system. But instead, they unleashed forces that tore it apart. But what if a different leader had taken the helm? Imagine a more hardline figure, someone like Yegor Ligachev, who opposed Gorbachev's reforms. This leader might have doubled down on central planning, using the state's iron fist to crush dissent and prop up the economy. Perhaps they would have used the KGB more aggressively to suppress the growing nationalist movements in places like Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia. Instead of pulling back, this Soviet Union pushes forward, determined to maintain its grip. So, what would this world look like in the 21st century? First, the geopolitical map would be dramatically different. Eastern Europe would remain under Moscow's influence, a block of satellite states forming a buffer zone against the West. Germany would likely still be divided. The vibrant democracies we see today in Poland, the Czech Republic, and Hungary might still be one-party states, their economies and societies tethered to Soviet directives. The Cold War's ideological battle would rage on. The world would not be dealing with a multipolar landscape of rising powers like China and India in the same way. Instead, international relations would be dominated by the tense bipolar standoff between the United States and the Soviet Union. Proxy wars, like those in Afghanistan or Vietnam, might continue to erupt in new hotspots around the globe, as both superpowers vie for influence in Africa, Latin America, and Asia. Technologically, the world would also be split. The internet, as we know it, might not exist. Instead of a single global network, we could have two: a Western internet and a Soviet RUNet, heavily censored and monitored, designed to control information rather than share it. This digital Iron Curtain would create a profound cultural and informational divide, shaping everything from social media to scientific collaboration. And what about space exploration? The space race might never have fizzled out. With constant competition, both the US and the USSR would pour massive resources into their space programs. We might have seen permanent moon bases or even joint missions to Mars, not as acts of cooperation, but as displays of technological supremacy. Imagine Neil Armstrong's one small step being followed by a Soviet cosmonaut planting the red flag right next to the stars and stripes. Economically, the Soviet Union would be a paradox. Without the shock therapy of the 1990s, it might have avoided the initial chaos of collapse. However, the fundamental flaws of a centrally planned economy would persist. It would likely be a major exporter of oil, gas, and raw materials, using that revenue to maintain its military and social programs. But innovation would lag. Without market competition, consumer goods would be scarce and of poor quality. The average citizen would have a guaranteed job and housing, but little personal freedom or opportunity for advancement. Culturally, this surviving Soviet Union would be a very different place. The rock music that symbolized freedom in the 80s would have been driven deeper underground. Art and literature would be subject to state approval, promoting socialist realism over individual expression. Dissidents who, in our timeline, became symbols of freedom would have remained imprisoned, or worse. The world would be poorer for the loss of their voices. This alternate reality would have also profoundly affected the United States and the West. The peace dividend of the 1990s, which allowed for reduced military spending, would never have materialized. Instead, defense budgets would have remained high, channeling resources away from other domestic priorities. The political climate would be one of constant vigilance and anti-communist sentiment, potentially leading to a less open and more suspicious society in the West as well. So, would this world be better or worse? For the millions living under Soviet rule, life would mean less freedom and fewer opportunities. The vibrant national cultures that re-emerged after 1991 would have remained suppressed. For the rest of the world, the constant threat of nuclear annihilation that defined the 20th century would loom large over the 21st. However, some might argue that the bipolar stability of the Cold War was preferable to the chaotic multipolar world we have today. The unchecked rise of non-state actors and regional conflicts might have been kept in check by the two superpowers policing their respective spheres of influence. It's a complex and unsettling thought. Exploring this what if isn't just a historical game. It reminds us how fragile history is, how the decisions of a few can shape the destiny of billions. The collapse of the Soviet Union wasn't just an event, it was a turning point that created the world we live in today. With all its freedoms, challenges, and complexities, it reminds us to never take our interconnected, dynamic world for granted. What do you think? Would a surviving Soviet Union have created a more stable world, or just prolonged a global nightmare? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoy exploring these kinds of historical what-ifs, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel for more. We'll see you in the next one.